Now, we've been talking a lot about the Israeli perspective and what we're taking a look at right here in Israel, but also the Palestinian perspective is a very important one to shine a light on as well. We are joined now by Samir Sinichtlawi, Fatah activist and chairman at the Jerusalem Development Fund. Samir, thank you for joining us as we continue to watch this latest ceremony unfold. The reaction then inside the West Bank as well as Gaza, what are we hearing? Is this symbolism and this show of force that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad has been parading inside Gaza, is it working to gain support?
Well, let's be frank, and I speak as a Palestinian who feels the pain and the suffer of the Gazans every day. Do we really need a group that performs these shows? Is this really what the Palestinians are expecting from those who claim that they are still the legitimate regime controlling Gazans? The Gazan people are waiting for answers to their problems. They need to see how they can get back their lives. They need somebody that is capable to reconstruct Gaza, to supply water, to supply food, to supply shelter for them. And Hamas continues to do these silly shows, as if these are the shows are the answers to the real problems of the Palestinians. And then who are these guys? Once there was a leadership for Hamas. Now nobody knows who is the leadership of Hamas. Is it the remaining of their political bureau that is traveling between Cairo and Doha? Or is it some militias that nobody knows because tier number 1 and tier number 2 of their military leaders was assassinated? Who is leading this organization? And from what is the source of their legitimacy? How can they decide on behalf of the Palestinians? We have seen from the tension on the negotiations for the release of the hostages and the ceasefire during the last week, that Hamas claimed that it would like to stop the procedures of the agreement because they requested to respect the obligations of Israel in entering tent and prefab houses for the Gazans. None of these entered, and yet Hamas continued. So Hamas cares only about Hamas. Hamas cares that there will be a continuation of the exit of their injured militaries with their accompanied family members or accompanied colleagues, and they don't care about the problems of the Gazans. From Hamas, this is a deal for Hamas that really takes into consideration their need, their interest, the interest of the organizations, but not the interest of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza.
And Samir, we are seeing more of this condemnation then, not only from the Western powers, but from Arab leaders as well in Arab countries. They're trying to come up with some sort of a solution that takes away Hamas's control from the Gaza Strip, and the remaining party that everyone continues to say is then the Palestinian Authority should have some sort of a hand in governing the Gaza Strip. But the reality of that, even if the Palestinian Authority does want to go in and govern Gaza, what is the likelihood then that some of these different Arab countries can actually force Hamas out of leadership that they clearly right now still remain intact?
Well, it needs cooperation from everybody, including the Israeli government. There should be a vision of the day after. The only way to force Hamas out of the life of Palestinians is to put a very smart plan for the day after, where some kind of a governmental structure comes to replace them, that represents more the interests of the Palestinians, that is capable to put an action plan on how to start rebuilding Gaza, on how to start identifying the relation between Gaza and the West Bank, between Gaza and Israel, on how to make this place more livable to those who live in it, how to make this place not seen as a hostile entity against its neighbors. So we should put together, and we need the Israelis here, the international community, the Arab moderate countries, maybe the USA. We need to see in Israel also an understanding to this need. And we need to join forces to try to force a replacement of Hamas. Hamas has been proven now. It doesn't need to be an expert to realize that most of Palestinians have seen that Hamas has acted in a terrible way, and that Hamas is held responsible on the consequences of its act. What's happening in Gaza should be on the shoulders of Hamas. This destruction, the way that the lives of 2.3 million Palestinians was stolen from them, their dreams, their homes, their lives, their schools, their community. Nothing is left in Gaza.
Well, and Samer, because of that, we are seeing many of the different polls and reactions from Gaza show that support for Hamas is dwindling inside Gaza, but the same cannot be said for the West Bank, as the West Bank has not seen the same suffering that Gaza has seen. So many of the Palestinians in the West Bank, the numbers are going up. They are supporting Hamas even over the Palestinian Authority. And so then how can we combat some of this growing support, and are there fears that then this support brewing inside the West Bank right now?
Well, let us read the results of the polls in a comprehensive way. In the West Bank, people are suffering from the corruption of Abbas. So they vote against this corruption. 90% of the Palestinians in the West Bank, they are requesting for Abbas to leave because they are directly under the suffer of the consequences of this regime, mainly corruption. In Gaza, the Palestinians are voting against Hamas and the destruction that it brought upon them. So in a way or another, maybe the support for Hamas is not accurate, it's fictitious. The Palestinians are waiting for a third choice to replace Hamas in Gaza and Abbas in the West Bank. They would like to see a Palestinian leadership that will be able to bring them hope and construction. If now elections will happen, and there will be a third way to replace Hamas and Abbas, a third option that is more respected by the people, a third option that is capable to work with the international community, with the Americans, with the Arab countries, with Israel, in order to change the reality on the ground, to replace this destruction in Gaza and the corruption in the West Bank by a process of construction on getting a Palestinian a decent life, into opening the horizons for a political solution, gaining the trust of the Israelis, gaining the trust of the Arabs, gaining the trust of the international community, gaining the trust of our own people. The Palestinians will vote for it. But we need to open these horizons. And I think it's the time. It's the time that we ask the question, a big question. Whom are the Palestinians going to give legitimacy and agency? And this can be determined in the election boxes. The only way to defeat Hamas in Gaza and Abbas in the West Bank is election boxes. Palestinians need to vote. And let us say that theoretically, if we take into consideration the fear from a lot of relevant parties, they don't want to see elections among Palestinians for the fear that maybe the Palestinians will elect Hamas. Fine, let us say that this will happen. Then it is fair that the Palestinians who voted for Hamas again will face the consequences. But now the Palestinians, the average Palestinian, is paying the price for these two regimes without voting for them. So I think it's the time to ask the Palestinians what choices they want to take. Is it Abbas, is it Hamas, or it is a third option that will release everybody from the current dilemma that we are all living in. We are now all hostages of a situation that has a lot of uncertainty. It's time for Palestinians to have a new future, a new leadership. It's time for Israelis and Palestinians to live in coexistence and peace. It's time for the whole Middle East to become a place that flourish economic development and cooperation and stability, and act as a group to face other real enemies that we have. I think that it's not only the Israelis that are facing the challenge of the Iranians. It's also all of us, the Sunni Muslims, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Palestinians. It's time for us to act collectively against the real threat that is waiting for us, which is the Iranian. So we need to fix all these problems and reshift the dynamics in the region into a proper direction, a direction of stability, peace, prosperity, economic relations, and acting as a group against the external threats that are waiting for us.
It is certainly time for a vision of peace, and hopefully we can start to see the beginnings of that. But as you mentioned, it needs to start, it seems, with elections and changing the leadership inside many of the different Palestinian spheres. Samir Sinijlawi, Fatah activist and chairman at the Jerusalem Development Fund. Samir, thank you for joining us as always.
Thank you.